Never mind that cloud, behind that cloud you'll find a golden ray. All's well, laugh your fears away. See the light ahead, right ahead. There's a moonlit night ahead. Everyone, come on, have fun. All's well. Why do they make me sing that song? The poet who wrote it was certainly wrong. It's bright ahead, go right ahead. I'd rather go home and go right to bed. My feet are wet, my bunions ache, and yet I've got to keep wide awake all night. I wake folks up to tell them things are all right and all's well. What's a rainy day? Never mind that cloud, behind that cloud you'll find a golden ray. All's well, laugh your fears away. See the light ahead, right ahead. There's a moonlit night ahead. Everyone, come on, have fun. Oh! Well, what's a rainy day?
Has visitors.
Do you know they're signing a wedding contract?
There's a giant on the beach. There's a giant out there. Oh, listen to...
Your Majesty.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Marriage contract. King Little of Lilliput does this 5th day of November give the hand of his daughter, Princess Glory, to Prince David, son of Bombo, King of Blefuscu. Right in order, right. King Bombo. We did it, you little rascal, you. We did it.
Yes, we certainly did, didn't we?
Yeah, just a couple of old Dan Cupids, I think.
Your Majesty, the wedding things are here.
There's a giant on the beach. There's a giant.
Exquisite taste. Exquisite.
Roses, freesies, rhododendrons, ranunculus, snapdragons und daisies. Pretty posies, aren't they?
Beautiful blooms. Beautiful. Oh! May I?
Oh, please do.
Magnificent! Oh, a masterpiece. Vanilla. Wow!
My only little daughter. I dread losing her.
Oh, buck up there, old boy. You're not losing a daughter. You're gaining a son.
My son, David.
Lovely melody.
Yes, we like it. That is Faithful, the song of Lilliput. It will be played at the wedding tomorrow.
Of course, of course. Oh, what's that? Faithful? Oh, no, no. Forever, the song of Blefuscu must be played at the wedding.
But, Bombo, Faithful is always played at our weddings. It's tradition, sir. And it's very pretty.
Yes, yes, I know. Pleasant little ditty, but hardly appropriate for this great occasion. But forever, there's a song for you. Ha-ha!
Faithful will be played.
Bah, twaddle, absolute twaddle. It must be forever.
Faithful.
Forever.
Faithful.
Forever. It will be forever, or there will be no wedding.
No wedding, but the cake and the pretty flowers and... Oh, Bombo, you love Faithful. Ah!
Oh, Joanna, I'll kick you. Why, this is an outrage. I've never... It's war!
War. Woe is me. Woe is me.
I found the mountain, Your Majesty. I found it. It was a man mountain.
War isn't nice.
It was fist big. No, it was fist big.
People are hurt in wars.
He's as big as Wait, Your Majesty.
Bombo can't frighten me. No, sir. Speak up. Don't stand there like a nincompoop.
I'm trying to tell you that there's a giant.
When I get my dandruff up, look out. But Glory, poor little Glory.
Don't look now, gentlemen, but it's war. War? Whoopee!
Forever, forever, there won't be anyone but you. Remember, I'm true, my sweet. Forever, forever, you share in everything I do. And keep smiling through, my sweet. I'll have just you here in my heart, and I'll trust you, though we're apart. So forever, my guiding angel you will be. So always have been in me.
War. Haha. Rolls off my back like a duck.
But I'm trying to tell you. I'm telling you, there's a...
What's on your mind?
I say,
Speak up, man.
there's a giant on the beach. There's a giant on the beach.
For heaven's sake, Gabby, button your mouth. Can't you see I have a war on my hands? Be off with you. Shoo, 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 shoo.
A war? Do you suppose he could be a spy?
Or they bother me with passion. Tush it. Who's a spy? Who's a spy?
The giant on the beach.
Giant! Why don't you tell me these things? Do something. Don't stand there. Go, stick the dogs on. Fetch him to me at once.
Wake up, wake up. There's a giant on the beach. A giant on the beach. Wake up, wake up. Wake up, there's a giant on the beach. Sleeping on the beach. A giant on the beach. Wake up, wake up. Giant on the beach. Wake up, wake up. There's a giant on the beach. A giant on the beach. Wake up, wake up. Wake up. There's a giant on the beach. Sleeping on the beach. A giant on the beach. Wake up, wake up. Giant on the beach. Wake up, wake up. There's a giant on the beach. A giant on the beach. Wake up, wake up. There's a giant on the beach. A giant on the beach. Wake up,
A giant?
There's a giant on the beach.
There's a giant on the beach.
Giant?
An elephant? A giant? A giant on the beach. Giant on the beach. I said there's a giant on the beach.
Bring cables and tools, bring horses and mules, bring snippers and clippers, ladders and spools. Bring derricks, a rig, or bring pulleys, a jig. Bring whatchamacallit, little and big, a thingamafud, a thingamajig, and all kinds of things and stuff like that there. Follow me! Quiet. We're almost there. Where is it? I don't know. But it was right here. Here.
Oh, yeah? Well, where is it now?
Well, I can't understand it. It was right here. Honest.
Giant. Dragging us out in the dead of the night. Yeah, chasing wild geese.
Gabby must have been seeing things. Maybe it just got up and flew away.
Yeah, and breathing fire.
Look out, Gabby! Your giant's gonna bite you! hey, fellas, maybe it was me, Thor. Look, I'm a giant. I'm a giant. Listen.
Told you that there was a giant on the beach, and well, there he is.
He said that's the giant on the beach!
There isn't a moment to waste. Every last man must do all that he can, work with the greatest of haste. So bind up its hands, its arms, its chest, its neck, its feet, and I'll do the rest. Let's go! Careful. Put him there. No, no. Here. Don't be afraid, man. He got me! He got me! Oh, help! He's killing me! I don't want to die! Help! Help! He's killing me! Help! Hey! Well, what are you waiting for? Tie him out! Get the wheels, come on, roll them into place. Bring pegs to hold them. Bring jacks, tackle, grease, and axle. All kinds of things and stuff like that there.
embassy. Right up, Nellie.
5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and oh.
Ready, Dandy Lou? Let's go!
Giddy up, Susie. Giddy up. Oh.
Lower away, then. Careful. Careful.
All set below.
Okay, let's go.
Giddy up, Tally ho! Giddy up. Giddy up! Come on, right there.
Find the ropes there. Not so fast. Not so fast. Hurry up there. Slow down. Get the wheels past. I don't know what they would do around here without me. Heave, heave.
Faithful was always played at our weddings. Faithful. Faithful.
Your Majesty,
Huh?
I've got the giant.
The giant? Oh, yes, the giant. Well, bring him in. Bring him in.
Okay. Your Majesty, I don't think he'd fit in here.
Oh, you don't, huh? So it's not good enough for him, Well, where is he?
Out there, Your Majesty.
Now then. Not good enough for him. Well, where is he?
From here on.
Call out the guards, the army, the navy, women and children first. I'll see you later.
Search him, men. He may be armed. Let me go. Help! Help! Let me go. I don't want to die. Help!
Well,
Put me down.
what have we
Help.
got here?
Help! Help! Don't eat me. Don't eat me. Help! I won't taste good. I'll give you indigestion.
A
Let me
man.
go. Help.
A tiny man.
Oh, you can't do this to me. I got a wife and kids, millions of kids.
Hold on there, mate. Nobody's going to hurt you.
Help! Put me down. Help! Help!
Drop that! Drop that!
Well, another one. Who are you?
Who, me? What? I'm king around here. Guards! Guards! To the turrets! Archers! Surround the giant! Surround the giant! Guards!
Well,
for this. Ready!
Aim fire!
Aim!
Fire!
How do you like that? Want some more? All right, let it go!
It's Bob! Oh! Close the gates! Man the battle! Defend the city! We're attacked! We're attacked!
Stop, you swine! Get back to your post! Get back there and fight! We of Blefuscu are not afraid of anything.
Well, where's everyone gone? This is no way to treat a harmless visitor.
Look, Gabby, we've won! Gabby? See, Gabby, they've gone. Yes, sir, we're scared still.
Hello there. Come now, don't let my size frighten you. You, Your Majesty, surely you're not afraid of me. Well, good. Then let me present myself. My name is Gulliver, Your Majesty. Lemuel Gulliver, a shipwrecked sailor. At your service.
Well, welcome to Lilliput, Mr. Gulliver. Mr. Gulliver, can you fight?
Well, Your Majesty, I can lick anybody my size.
Ah, splendid, splendid. I don't think Bombo will give us any further trouble while you're around here. No, sir. He's on our side, Gabby. He's on our side. There's nothing to fear. The Mad Mountain's on our side. It's a happy day, toodaloo-lay, for you and me, for us and we, all the class ever.
It's a happy day, toodaloo-lay, the sunshine bright, and the world's all right. It's a happy day. Orange bells and beams are dancing on the bay.
Come on, where are those buttons?
It's a happy day. You can't go wrong if you sing that song.
Grab it! Hold on! Nab it!
Understand that not until that giant is removed can our forces taste the sweet fruits of victory. Now then, it is up to you to carry this message to my spies in Lilliput. Be off, and may luck be with you. Get going!
Majesty, I'm sorry the little princess isn't with us.
Yes, too bad. Too much excitement for one day. Bluebirds in the moonlight.
That's how I feel when I'm with you. There are night owls in the daylight.
Silly idea, night owls in the daylight.
My heart is saying
Who is the one for us? You! It's what you've done for us.
there are bluebirds in the moonlight. Say I get you. That's how I feel when I'm with you. There are bluebirds in the moonlight. Say I get you. That's how I feel when I'm with you. There are night owls in the birds in the moonlight. See how dear bluebirds in the moonlight. That's how I feel when I'm with you. I'm there without you.
see that you're a sailor boy. I owned a boat, a beauty too, 50 times as big as your shoe.
My.
Aye. Lost her though in a furious gale, but I came home on the back of a whale.
But tell me how you caught the whale.
simply grabbed a hold of his tail.
My.
I climbed a mountain peak so high, I bumped my head against the sky. And there I was. Where was I?
On the island of Alibi.
Hi.
My.
Hi. But now my life is very dull. They ought to make me an admiral. Now that's the job that I'd enjoy. I must be going. Ahoy, ahoy.
My.
You put that ball in there, and then it goes down and around. Pull that thing.
And it comes out here.
Giant!
The light! Douse the light! He's gone.
Hello? Anybody in there?
Nobody here but just us. Chickens!
My.
But you remember I'm true, my sweet.
Forever, da 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 la 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 la. Forever. That's the song of Weatherskew. Spy! Guard! A spy! A spy! Guard! A spy! A spy! Guard! Concealing a spy. And in a time of war, too. That makes it worse. Carry on the search, men. Mind you, Your father will hear of this.
Bobo, say the word, and the giant is a dead duck.
Is a dead duck.
P.S. What do we do with the body?
2 hearts and a wedding broken by a melody? Incredible. Wait a minute. I have an idea that might turn this malice to a melody. Sing Faithful and Forever together as one song.
The giant will be a dead duck. Ha! Now we are getting at somewhere. Dear spies, destroy, crush, obliterate, annihilate. Kill him. I will attack at dawn. Affectionately yours, Bombo.
What you got there? Attack at dawn. Attack. Bombo's attack. Guards! 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 Bombo's attacking! Bombo's attacking! Bombo's attacking at dawn! Bombo's attacking! It's war! Bombo's attacking! To arms! It's war! The enemy attacks! To the beach! To the beach! Bomb attacking! What? Bombo attacking! War! It's war! To the beach! To the beach! The enemy attacks!
To defend Lilliput. Yes, forward march.
All together now, all together now.
Gulliver! Gulliver! Where are you? Bombo's attacking! Where are you, Gulliver? We'll be wiped out! Gulliver, where are you? Gulliver! Gulliver! Bombo is attacking! Gulliver! Gulliver! Bombo is attacking! It's war! Gulliver! It's war! Gulliver! Where are you? Gulliver! Gulliver! It's war! Gulliver! Bombo's attacking! Bombo's attacking! It's war! Let me down! Huh! Well, where you been, you lazy, long-legged, overgrown lummox? Now, get down there to that beach and wipe out that Bombo and that bunch of Lepusculians and tear them to pieces and don't leave a man alive to tell the tale. Forward march!
Aye,
Get
aye,
going.
sir. My.
Hey! Wait for me! Gulliver! Wait for me! Wait for me, Gulliver!
What is it?
What did you do with it?
Where'd you lose it?
Who's got it now?
Gulliver! Gulliver! Wait for me! Gulliver!
Let's go!
Hold on there. We can settle this peacefully. Listen! Hold your fire! Hear what I have to say. Bombo, order your men to lay down their arms. Must I make you listen?
David, look. Gulliver's Thunder Machine.
Wait here, Glory.
David.
David.
Poor, foolish little people. Look what you've done. Now go ahead, break your nutshell heads over your songs. But did you have to break Glory's heart, King Little? Because you're thoughtless and selfish? And you, Bombo, oh mighty warrior, what have you won? You were too stubborn to think, too busy quarreling to lend ear to the harmony that might have been yours. But now, in your sorrow and despair, perhaps you'll listen to your songs as they might be sung. Remember that.
Faithful forever, and thankful for you. I'll keep smiling.
Remember that.
We may be apart, now and then, but I'll hold you in my heart till you're in my arms again.
Faithful forever.
I promise to
So always
In behalf of the peoples of Blefuscu and Lilliput, with eternal gratitude and love in our hearts, we christen thee Gulliver.